And because a lot of people in our business, now I'm not going to pretend to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, I'm kind of an idiot. I get things wrong often. But I feel like I understand how college sports, specifically football, work. Do I get predictions right? No. Again, not often. Am I the best analyst? Not even close. Cole Kubelik's one state over. But I understand how it works. And I have learned these last few days that there are so many people in our business that just don't understand how it works, because you have seen and heard from all the way up to Pat Forty, people saying things like the SEC should kick Vanderbilt, Missouri, and the Mississippi's out. Guy that we had on this show kind of recently to talk baseball from Baton Rouge said that Ole Miss and Mississippi State need to leave because they have no value to the SEC. They bring nothing to the table. Through the smugness and the arrogance is also a lack of basic intellect and understanding, or the unwillingness to just, I don't know, go to Google and look up a couple of things. I decided to do that today. We'll start with Sportico. The total operating revenue in the 2020 to 2021 calendar year. Total operating revenue in college sports. Alabama, number one, $180 million. I'll skip a few, although the entire top 8 is either an SEC program or a program that's going to be in the SEC. Alabama, A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, South Carolina, which is surprising to me, at 6, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Florida State at 9, Ole Miss at 10. So if you're thinking in your head, that means Ole Miss has a total operating revenue, or had a total operating revenue, according to Sportico, who does a good job with this kind of database, ahead of Auburn, ahead of Clemson, ahead of LSU. Also Kentucky, Kentucky, Arizona State, and Oregon. Guess who shows up at number 17? Mississippi State. That is Mississippi State and Ole Miss in the top 17 as athletic departments and operating revenue. For what it's worth, Ole Miss is listed here at 127, State at 112. Mississippi State is ahead of Missouri, Wisconsin. Get this, Ohio State. Because Ohio State is, they sponsor a lot of sports, and it's really just football up there. Either way. Penn State, Virginia, North Carolina, Arizona, Michigan, Louisville, Illinois, you get the point. That's total operating revenue according to Sportico. Next layer to it. This is according to Forbes. Now, they only did a top 25. Mississippi State does not appear in this top 25. It's just Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a top 25 program in college football, specific value programs. Now, the way they compiled this list was an average over the 3 previous years leading into last season. So this is 2018, 2019, and 2020. So with 2 years of Matt Luke, Ole Miss still is a top 25 football program in estimated value by Forbes, who, again, this is what they specialize in. If you need more, I've got more for you. There was a survey done of 1,000 current high school Division I recruits on brand, how they view favorably or unfavorably all the brands in college football. As you can imagine, Alabama's number 1, Ohio State, if you can believe it, ahead of Georgia at number 2. I'll scroll down a little bit, get to Ole Miss at number 15. That's ahead of Michigan, Florida State, Tennessee, Southern Cal, UCLA, Auburn, and Michigan State. Guess who else is in the top 25? Mississippi State at 23. That's ahead of Maryland, South Carolina, Kentucky, Oklahoma State, Missouri, TCU, Iowa, Georgia Tech, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Arkansas. You get the point. And lastly, finally, television viewership. Who watches these teams? Last year, in average viewership per game, Ole Miss came in at number 18 in college football, just barely behind A&M, LSU, and Arkansas. The SEC and the ACC dominate the top 18. After Ole Miss, Clemson, Iowa, Purdue, Oklahoma State, Tennessee, Florida State, Indiana, Cincinnati, who just joined the Big 12, Baylor, Illinois, Southern Cal, Kentucky, Miami, North Carolina. Mississippi State on this list is at 43. But in the years spanning 2015 to 2019, both Mississippi schools were in the top 30 in average viewership per game. These programs have real, true value, and people watch them, and recruits view them favorably. That is an arguable fact backed by data.
Yeah, I mean, State didn't have a CBS game last year. That's the main reason for not being up. Ole Miss had 2, right?
Yes.
Just 2? I thought there was at 3.
They had LSU at home and at Alabama, so they had at least 2.
Alabama, right. So they had 2. And that Alabama game, I mean, you remember that Ole Miss was undefeated. A lot of
hype.
The eyes of college football were on that game that day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, none of this is surprising if you really think about it. You know, the State and Ole Miss play in the best conference. They play against the best teams. They recruit the best players. They're going to have the branding that everybody's talking about, that buzzword that everybody's using, branding. Mississippi State and Ole Miss have it. You know, when you see that powder blue helmet, you know that that's Ole Miss. When you see that M State, people know that that's Mississippi State. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a tired trope. It is low-hanging fruit. It's however you want to describe it when you see a columnist or an analyst or a radio host to say, well, those teams need to get out of the SEC because they don't add anything. Well, that's not right. It's just not right. This is a whole state, sort of the whole SuperTalk premise that we have a state full of networks to create a listenership that goes from one part of the state to the other. You have 2 schools in this state, and of the close to 3 million people who live here, 2 million of them are fans of one of those 2 schools. So there's plenty of people watching, plenty of people interested, and plenty of reasons to keep those 2 schools right where they are in the SEC.
Yeah, and the thing is, they've been interesting for the casual fan. I've got friends that text me about Lane Kiffin, just randomly, like, hey, I saw Kiffin did this. That translates to something. People are always intrigued by Mike Leach. Washington State, when Mike Leach was at Washington State, was watched by people. Mm-hmm. You want to know why?
Yeah.
Because Mike Leach was there. So on top of being in the conference, and a lot of this does happen because of association, there's no doubt about that. But on top of just having devout fans that are not just in the state, that Nashville's got a big group of fans that exist there. Atlanta, I mean, we do numbers in Atlanta. People that have moved there. That
Birmingham, Huntsville, Memphis, Little Rock. Every southern city has got a few thousand maybe, Mississippi State and Ole Miss fans living in it.
And on top of that, you're kind of compelling. And not kind of, you're compelling. Yeah. And it hasn't been just right now. State was really good under Dan Mullen.
Well, I mean, Ole Miss was one of the top, most compelling teams in the country last year. They were fun to watch. With Kiffin and Corral, that was a fun watch. You knew when you were watching those games, they were going to be entertaining. Mike Leach, and I feel like State's getting there. This might be a year where State's entertaining. You're like, man, when you watch State, they're putting 35, 40 points.